Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show number 59. Today's topic is itemization. And before we kick into that, I'm going to go and introduce our folks that are with us today. We have Lex with us today. Say hello, Lex.
Hello, people.
And as you can see, there's no Josh today. Josh is currently in the air somewhere above the UK, ready to land. And we have Shy with us. Say hello, Shy.
Hello.
So you're stuck with us three today. And before we talk about today's topic, we're going to go into some of the news that's come out. As you guys all know, the newsletter was released actually quite just a few hours ago, roughly. What was it, Shy? 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that?
3 o'clock in the morning, my time on Pacific in beautiful Seattle.
Yep, and there was
3 freaking a.m.
some interesting. It was a definitely interesting newsletter, especially when it comes to crafting and whatnot. So the craft people that are interested in crafting definitely got their fill. I'm going to go and quickly bring up the link for this newsletter for all of you people out there that haven't seen it yet. I'll give you the link to April's newsletter right now. We're not going to talk about it in detail, and that will be for our Tavern Talk show at the end of the month. I'm going to quickly rearrange my camera because I seem to be shifting. So before we get into the itemization, I want to bring up some of the screenshots as well that they had. I'm going to put those on the screen right now for you guys to view. This was one that they tweeted out with the newsletter. Some scenic footage from, I'm guessing, Avendir's Pass. Looks amazing though. The way the trees look and the clouds and everything, and you know, the visualization in the distance, the mountains and everything just looks absolutely phenomenal. But the next screenshot is the one I'm...
Is all I'm going to say.
And the next screenshot, hopefully, I think it's this one. Nope. This is also another great screenshot. This was from Brad's tweet. And you can see some of the towers, outposts by the looks of it, somewhere in the background. It just looks absolutely gorgeous so far. And
I love the mist.
And if we think about it, basically, they still haven't gone in and done all the detailing for the lighting effects, etc. That's still stuff that is still in the works, but it looks great. You know, the world builders have done a fantastic job so far. Now, this is my favorite screenshot. This is definitely this is one that was in the newsletter about the crafting, and this is definitely from the Gnomes skyship. I swear to God, this is from their skyship, and I was trying to figure out by looking at the windows to see if I could see where they were in Terminus. I actually found myself scrolling in, getting the image as big as I could and as clear as I could to figure out where in Terminus they would be stationed. But it looks...
on that rug is amazing.
It does. It looks great.
Wow.
Just all the little things on the table too.
The detail is just incredible. All the work that they've put into it.
So let's go and get into our topic, itemization. And Lex, for the viewers out there, for people that might not know exactly what that term means, give a quick brief explanation of what itemization means and what we expect of it.
Well, to put it very simply, and like I said, I'm just going to hit the tip of the iceberg here. Itemization is basically the design of your items. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a really big deal, but honestly, there's been a lot of games out there where if your items just don't seem to fit right, you know, it actually has a great impact on your game. Usually a negative one if you don't design them right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically just the very, very short and simple version of it.
And itemization, it's definitely a touchy topic, but it's one that needs to be discussed because Lex already just mentioned as well, if designed wrong or not taken care of, it can make or break a game entirely as well. I've witnessed this in EverQuest 2. Where the itemization makes absolutely no sense anymore.
EverQuest 2 is probably the worst one we've seen in a while. I mean, there have been ones that have just been atrocious.
Yeah.
But EverQuest 2's, at least nowadays, it's a mess.
Well, I think part of that has to do with the fact they were not expecting the game to last so long either.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is...
So now they're all going, oh no, we have to fix it so people play.
I think it's that, and also the fact that EverQuest 2 kind of got back into the swing of things when they kind of jumped on this hand-holding, simplistic bandwagon. You know, they just made things a lot easier for people. And I mean, I'm not saying this as really a bad thing. It's a bad thing for a lot of us veterans. But for people just coming into the MMO genre, it's a very good thing, right? Because you don't want to start them off too complex. But there's a point where it's just so simple, you're just smashing your head against the wall going, why?
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm going to go see if I can find that screenshot later. I don't know if it was one of those that I put up, I can't remember. Anyway, so the thing is with itemization, and the big problem that developers have, now if I think back to how EverQuest 2 was originally intended to be, from gameplay, from items, etc. You had all your stats, your strength, stamina, etc., etc., etc. They all played a major part. For each class, the individual stats represented a different way of how they affected you play-wise, or even mana-wise, health-wise, etc. And it's the same with when they came to how the classes were meant to be. They had 4 different tanks that could basically be a main tank in EverQuest 2. But a lot of that did not get reflected. They took, they didn't pay attention to what they were trying to achieve. I remember the first raiding zones in EverQuest 2 where you had encounters that had different effects. So you had some with disease, you had some with physical damage, you had some that relied on arcane, etc., etc. And that's what all these individual tanks were for. A Shadow Knight would tank the disease encounter. The Berserker or the Guardian would tank the physical encounter. The Paladin would tank the arcane encounter, and so forth and so forth. And these are things that they did not take into account. And a lot of people did not even realize that. If the game would have been played the right way, I think EverQuest 2 would have gone in a complete different direction. But people just took the Guardian for what it was. It had a high HP, it had a high mitigation, and so it got determined by us, the players, that would be the main tank regardless. And that is something that needs to, where developers also need to pay attention to, is when they're designing their items, etc., and they're designing their encounters and this, that, and the other. That all needs to be paid attention to. There shouldn't be one definitive way or one definitive tank that gets, you're going to be the main tank and boom, you're done. They have to take into account what they design reflects exactly what they're trying to achieve. And we came up with some cool ideas. What we do know on itemization is, for sure, so far, from the streams that we've seen, that they will have 8 different stats that will play a part in our classes. We have Strength, Wisdom, Int, Agi, Dex, Stamina, Charisma, and Constitution. Those will be the 8 defining stats, and obviously you're going to have your resists and etc, etc. You're going to have your passive abilities, your own individual abilities for your individual class, but these 8 main stats will basically play a major part in how we define our classes when dealing with items, etc. So let's go and let's actually just jump into the cool stuff that we actually talked about when it comes to itemization. Now, in the newsletter, they talked a bit about the crafting and how they plan to approach this a bit. And while we was reading that, we found it quite amusing, to be honest, because 2 days ago, preparing for the show, we were actually talking about cool ways to actually take itemization to a complete different level, and it looks like VR had the same similar idea. Now we're talking about defining items and set gear bonuses, set gears, situational gear, and we're going to go and talk a bit about this because it's going to be the main portion of the show. So let me just go and bring up a general idea that I discussed with Shy and Lex about defining items. So the idea is, what we would love to see happen in Pantheon is to have less items out there, less fluff items for us to gather, and have more meaningful items. And when items are found throughout the world, they don't have fixed stats on there. They don't have fixed resists on there. They could, some certainly could. They could have, like, maybe strength on there. They could have an identification mark for being class specific, for instance, or for the specifics of what the item is, for instance, being plate armor, leather armor, etc. Now, what about doing something like adding like adornment slots to these items? So instead of having your typical item that you find, your plate armor that has strength, maybe it has stamina on it, maybe it has charisma on it, instead of having that all on there, what about having you as a player determine what you want to put on there? So this is what some of the ideas that we were talking about, where crafters would play a major part in this, because it would be something a crafter would have to do. A crafter, you could take this item that you found, now you can use it for yourself if it's of value to you, or you could basically take it to a crafter and have him put stats on there that you can then use to maybe trade off to somebody else. And these stats could basically get changed out. So you start off with this item, and it's something that you would carry for a long time, for longer periods of time. So it's not something that's worn for the sake of it being a level 2 item, for instance. Now, as soon as you reach level 5, you switch it out. No, because you can define the stats yourself, and etc. And upgrade stats as well. You could basically wear that for a longer period of time, and we would have specific items out there in the world that are defined by the developers that are unique. Do you want to chime in here quickly, Lex?
Well, on that same note, I mean, I always thought about, like, whatever fantasy adventure kind of story you like to read, or whatever book series. When you're reading these books, your characters aren't constantly putting on new gear, And with an MMO, it's almost like a story of you and your character. So why should your story be all about basically putting on outfits every other level, If you get an item that gives you more customizations, or at least ways to make it fit you better, there's, almost a better feeling behind it, because it feels like, I made this the way I want it. I put the work in to make it this way. I don't want to replace it because I really like it, But of course, there are going to be upgrades. That's just the way these games work. But I mean, like I said, I've played almost every MMO out there, and I get really tired of level 5. Oh, we'll go to a vendor, buy this set. Playing an Asian game, or you hit level 10, buy this set. Or in a lot of these the Western style games, where it's like you just randomly find tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff. But maybe 1 in 10 might even be a contender for a replacement. So it's like, you feel like you're a garbage collector.
Yeah.
I would love to see that go away.
So it's similar to what Dark Souls said, basically, what we're trying to bring across here. Having you as a player, basically, you have to go to a crafter and pick out what stats you want to put on that item. Obviously, they would have to be accustomed to that item, so you can't put every stat on there. Obviously, there's going to have to be limitations. But you could basically go ahead and say, right, this is a plate piece of armor that I found. I want it, or whatever, or I got it given to me, etc. Now, I want to use it for myself, and I'm a tank, for instance. I'm a physical tank, so I'm going to go and put strength, stamina, and maybe put in some charisma on it as well, whatever, and or agility, or dex, stuff like that. And you can basically upgrade it. You can change it out. You can then basically even take maybe other items that are similar to this item and break it down. This is something we talk about on set bonuses. We would love to see set gear play a major part again in MMOs. Some try to bring it back in every now and then. You get set pieces, but you never got a full set.
Or by the time you got the full set, it was completely just irrelevant now.
It was made irrelevant, and we thought
levels later.
We thought of ways how to make set gear be of interest to you as a player, prolonging its life, its value as well. So the idea was basically, let's say for instance, to make it simple, I'm going to use the example I used the other day. Let's say for instance for each tier there is one gear set out there. So you got a tier 1 gear, you got tier 2, you got tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. Now when you're leveling through the game, some people are going to say, well, why would I want to go and get the level 1 set gear or the tier 1 set gear when I've already got the tier 3, etc. Now they could add bonuses where basically you as a player would have to go out and obtain all these gear sets, and if you take them to a crafter, he can break them down into their raw elements and you get a percentage. To make it simple again, let's say for instance you got a tier 1 item or tier 1 set gear, you break that down, you get 1% that you can add to your tier 5. You get the tier 2 set gear, that's 2%. You get the tier 3, that's 3%. You get the tier 4, that's 4%. So basically you take, it gives you something else to do as well in your downtime, etc., to go and hunt out these sets of gear. You've got the tier 5, but you can make the tier 5 even stronger by adding the tier 1 1% bonus onto it, the tier 2, etc., and stuff like that. That's something we talked about yesterday. And Lex brought up a valid point as well when it comes to adding, obviously, for each tier sets in there. That would basically disturb the game as well. Do you want to go and bring that up quickly? But this is just to give you guys a general idea to think about this.
Right. Well, I'm gonna reiterate this again. My early years in EverQuest were not the best because of life and all this other stuff. But I have learned from my my experiences, and I no longer wish to be that way. So the thing is, you can't figure out how to stop bad behavior unless you know what the bad behavior is. So in this case, the first thing I thought was, well, if I can get, say I'm level 50, I've got tier 5 set and I can feed it all these lower tiers. That means as a max level character, I can go back to these technically irrelevant areas, or at least the sections of these areas that are for lower level people, and I can cause major disruptions because now I'm one-shotting massive groups of mobs or camping bosses that aren't relevant to me, except for the fact that I just want this gear to feed to my set gear. And it's a very big concern because there's almost no reason for the high-level person to be polite, to help the other people. You can just walk in and one-shot groups at a time, and no one can stop you. You know, while a lot of people I know don't really think that is a big issue, and in most games it isn't. If there's a reason and a way to do things that are going to hurt the community, you can bet that somebody somewhere sometime is going to do it. So I'm hoping that if there is a system like this, they find a way around that, so that there's maybe a reason for me to help the people in that area instead of hindering them while I'm doing this.
Because let's all be honest, right? The reason I left EverQuest 2 after 10 plus years of playing was for the simple reason that every time an expansion came out, they made modifications, they added new stuff in there, and it was rinse and repeat. I was fed up of finally getting all that gear together, maybe weeks prior to the expansion coming out. For whatever reason, it does not matter, but it was rinse and repeat, and I'm fed up with that. I'm fed up with, I know exactly, I'm going out, doing my thing, doing quests, doing dungeons, doing raids, doing this, doing that, and at the end of the day, it's all for nothing. This gear that I've obtained is pointless. It's going to get thrown out. It's going to get thrown out the trash. It's going to get, you know, redefined by the next expansion. I have to go out and get some new stuff. Now, obviously, some mechanics have to be in play, but there has to be other ways to keep people engaged and want to go out and seek different parts of armor, and this is what we're talking about, alternate ways to obtain items, rather than just shoving in thousands and thousands of items together. They should have less items in the world, more meaningful stuff.
Right. And if I can interrupt for just a second,
go on.
I mean, Ken brings up a very good idea. Like on the Coronavirus server on EverQuest, they had trivial loot codes, so high-level tunes couldn't get low-level loot. You always have to look at every aspect of design from 2 or more different ways. Like that sounds like a great way to stop it, and it has worked in EverQuest. But the thing is, say that this is something that is actually a mainstay for the itemization, where you should go back and get all this stuff if you, for whatever reason, skipped it. So now, as a max level character, I'm at a huge disadvantage because I didn't spend my leveling areas in these specific areas getting these sets.
Yep.
So, like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, and I'm just saying there's you always have to look at it from at least 2 different standpoints, because while if they did that, now I'm at a disadvantage, but you're making the lower level areas safer for the community. I mean, good and bad either way. It's not something that's going to be easily fixed, but it's
So let's talk about a bit, ways that they could define meaningful items. So we talked about this yesterday, and ways to do this is have actual situational gear out there in the world. For instance, let's take the example Amber Fate. We know it's going to be a frozen area, and there's obviously going to be bits in it for the raid where it's going to be hot. They could have situational gear or gear sets determined for just that area, that zone, that dungeon, etc. Those are ways of maybe doing it for us to obtain other gear sets. Now, because this is going to touch on to the situational gear idea we also had. So let's go and talk quickly a bit about the situational gear so you get a better understanding on what we are trying to say here. What about doing the same thing to situational gear? Rather than having determined resistibilities or procs on your gear from the get-go, again, you do the same thing with the situational gear by defining it yourself. You as a player go to a crafter, you've got plate armor on, you go to a crafter, and you know that you want to go into a dungeon that has or requires a high resist on disease, poison, and maybe cold. Now you go to a crafter and he designs you that situational gear as an additional slot that you would put on top of your armor, and then that is basically, once it's designed, it's designed. You can't change it, you can't modify it. You've basically gone and designed that. That's a way to take out money from the game. It's, that's your money sink, etc. You're not basically tampering with anything. You're letting players decide, because this is what we're talking about. They're talking about player-driven economy, player-driven community, player-driven dungeons, etc, etc, etc. So why not give it all to us? Let the players actually determine how they want to approach games, because I would really love to have gear that I wear from the get-go all the way up to the end that I've modified over time. I've added to it. Lex finds a piece of plate armor. He goes to a crafter, he now adds spikes onto it. Now he's got a spiky plate armor, etc, etc, etc.
And sadly, I am a bit of a vain tank. I mean, I want my Dire Lord, I want him to look scary and badass. I mean, there's just no way around it. So if there was something that I don't care if a player says, say platinum is the biggest denomination of coin in the game. If he comes back and says, 500 platinum for spikes, they serve no purpose but to make you look mean and nasty, like, sold.
We're not saying there shouldn't.
So yeah, it's a great money thing. Absolutely.
We're not saying there shouldn't be items in the game. There should be less of them, but the items that are out there that make us want to go out and seek them are meaningful.
Right.
They're the non-plus ultra armor.
Exactly.
VR can basically design items. Your epic gear, for instance. Special drop items from certain NPCs, etc. that have real meaning, and they give us players items in the world that we determine. that we say, I want to have it this way. Because if we look at some of these games, like EverQuest 2, where, just an example, I don't know how it is in World of Warcraft now, but the biggest problem I see, they changed the way your character is designed. Out of the 6 or 7 stats that you had, now only 2 are relevant for each character. So me as a healer would be Wisdom and Strength. Strength would give me more health. Wisdom would basically give me more mana, make my heals more stronger, make my damage more stronger, etc. But there would be items still in the world that had stats on there that are completely irrelevant to me. Why? It makes no sense. And
it's one of the things that I really missed about EverQuest 1 was that every player statistic, well, physical attribute, I should say, to be more specific, they all did something to your character. Every single one of it. Int helped a warrior gain skills, but that's all it did for them, and it was up to the player to determine how important that was to them. I missed that. I missed that ungodly amounts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the situational gear would be pretty cool, because like you said as well when we talked about this, and I'm sure Shai's done this as well, we've in previous MMOs, what have we gone and done? We've gone and gathered 2 of the same set, because we want because we're you've got the set for your grouping, then you got the set for your soloing, or you got the set for your raiding, etc. for a certain zone. You've gone out and modified it, and you have 3 different sets because you don't want to mess up that one set or this set. You have your backups, etc. And it's an annoyance.
And then you've got your resist sets.
Sets, etc. So why not have an additional, the situational gear be something that can be crafted by crafters, and obviously it's going to be a money sink. It's going to take a lot of money, this, that, and the other. Gathering certain materials maybe. But you can then define what situational gear you want. You're not related to your item being fixed on. You might have got. Let's just make it simple. You've got a cool piece of armor. It looks absolutely amazing. But you want to go into a zone where this piece of armor is pointless to you because the resists on there are completely worthless. You can't wear it, but you want to wear it. It looks amazing. Lex has found his spiky piece of armor, but he can't really use it. So why not let us determine, have the situational gear be something like Dark already said. Dark, that would be a great idea. Add that as a new crafting profession. The Protector, something like that, where you go to the craft and you say, I need situational gear for fire, cold, poison, etc., etc., etc. And you can have those as adornments. And we talked about basically also adding tiers to the item, to the gear that you would find. So you could have an armor piece that only has 2 slots on there for you to determine. So you can only put maybe strength on there and wisdom, or you have an item that has 3 slots on there for you to determine. Those are some of the ideas that we talked about. Regardless what is in development right now, the plans right now, like I said, this is all speculation. This is all things we just wanted to, what ifs if they could, etc. to also help VR look at it from a different point of view. And
it's a little idea that just slipped through the cracks or something, or someone thought of it then forgot about it, and they're like, hey, I thought of something like that a year ago.
So Shai,
yes,
what things would you definitely not want to see when it comes to itemization? Because we also talked about,
no bloat, no more bloat.
Please,
Exactly.
for the love of God.
The last thing, I play a mage. I've always played a mage. I am a summoner at heart. The last thing I want is to actually have stuff on there for me to beat stuff up. I'm not going to be beating stuff up. I'm going to be in the back blowing stuff up. Sending my pet to go do it. I don't want to have weapon bonus damage on my gear. There's no point in it if I'm not going to be using my weapon against the mob.
Yeah. And
it's just silly.
Yeah, it never made much sense, especially with EverQuest 2, because EverQuest 2 you get a really nice piece of gear, and it's got every single physical attribute
Exactly.
like 9 different attributes, 3 for physical,
And
3
they're
for
pointless.
casters, and you're just like, it's obviously a mage. It's obviously a wizard item because it says for wizards and warlocks. So why do I have all of this other stuff? Why do I have like weapon strikes or multi-hit and all this other? You're just like, oh my god, people.
I mean,
to me, that screams lazy.
Yeah, really. I mean, what I want to see is I want to see my gear, with me being a mage, I want to see gear put towards my class. If I'm a mage, I should have intelligence. It should not be other things.
I don't want to almost feel like this robe was tailored for you, right? Granted,
Exactly.
all the int casters are gonna want similar stats regardless. But you don't want to get a robe that's got like Dex and Agility on it, which might be for the scout classes. It's just like, why? I could understand having a little strength because that could possibly affect
Exactly.
encumbrance.
Yeah.
Which is
Exactly. But there's no point in putting physical melee stuff on.
Right.
If you're not a physical melee class.
That's why the idea of, determining your item, your gear, defining your gear yourself makes so much sense. If we could determine how our gear is designed, that comes towards the uniqueness as well that all these games always scream MMOs. Each character is unique, each class is unique, each race is unique. You define how your character is. No, you don't. But with this idea, you could actually go and define how you want to play, how you want to go and gear yourself up, etc. This would be a really true, unique, defining moment for you. You go out there and design it how you want to play, how you want to be.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's a smart idea for every aspect of it, simply because, a lot of MMO companies don't really spend a lot of time on their itemization, and it shows. You get a lot of just like classless gear, which means anyone can wear it, that has just very broad, almost randomized stats on it. And you get a couple of games that do like, WoW, I don't know if they do it anymore, but these have like, Short Sword of the Owl, which had wisdom on it and stamina, versus their Short Sword of the Fox that had agility and strength, which are just randomly generated items. If you spent twice the amount of time just designing the itemization systems and just kind of getting everything to where it's more player driven in a way, or more customizable for the player, you actually solve a lot of problems. Because a warrior is not a warrior is not a warrior. I play my Dialord a certain way. Maybe I'm overly physical. Well, my buddy Jim, maybe he's a Dialord as well, but he has trouble with dealing with casters, so he designs most of his items to have a lot of things to help him take out casters. They might be the same pieces of gear, but mine are tailored to my playstyle, the way I want him to be, and he's the way he wants to be. Kind of make up for our own weaknesses and or strengths, versus kind of digging through dumpsters in a way, trying to find that one item that might be decent for me. It just, to me, it just makes so much more sense.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of the load off of the developers as well. They could spend more time creating meaningful, really true, unique gear that they put out there in the game. That is, the gear that we all want to go and get some, or would love to have, and be envious of people that have it, because there's not a lot of work that they would have to do. They would obviously have to go and set up limitations, for each class, for each race, etc. But we as players, it's in our hands to go and choose how we want the items to be, obviously within its limits.
And
go on.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, I'd really like to see the crafters have a lot more
exactly
to do with helping me personalize my gear. For instance, I could, as Lexer was saying, I could be standing next to another summoner and we could have the exact same robe, same look, same everything. But this person, perhaps they specialized in fire pets, and I'm specializing in earth pets. So, you could get different crafter-oriented gems or adornments to help you poof it up the way that you want to do it.
Yep. And that's, and that's the thing. where a lot of these games they don't put the time in anymore. You look at the development over the years, and you can see them becoming lazy. You know, if you change something in the itemization, you have to change the whole dynamic of the NPCs, how they're approached, etc. And these are things that weren't looked out of. Be it EverQuest 2, be it Terra, it doesn't matter which MMO it was. They don't look at the general picture. If you change something with an item or with a player, with a class, with a race, it affects everything around it. And they don't put the time in anymore, and they just get really lazy, and we're fed up with it. We are fed up. You know, let us determine to some point how we want to truly play our individual classes. Because that's what it's all about. Like Lex and Shai just said, having the robe or plate armor be identical, but because of the way he's determined or she's determined her stats, it looks completely different, or it has a different effect towards how you play your character. And that's the thing, you know, we're thinking of ways to get the crafters involved. This is all crafter related. These are things that you have a crafter have to do. Because, you know, they emphasized on crafting becoming more important. They even mentioned you as an adventurer, it would be a benefit to you if you were also a crafter. So that's, you know, this is where we came, you know, this is where we sat down and thought about these crazy ideas of defining items yourself. And it's the same with clicky items or procs. Let that be something that's determined. I've seen items in-game where I just went and lost my mind because there was 4 different items for me, but they all had the same proc on there. It's like, why? You know, why do they have to have the same proc on there? Because it's laziness. It makes no sense anymore. You know, I
mean, to kind of play devil's advocate here, most MMO companies blow the vast majority of their budget on visuals. I mean, don't get me wrong, visuals are very nice because that's what draws people to it first. Mm-hmm. But in the end, all glamour and no guts is a boring ass game. Sorry, it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just me.
Well, having a thought about the procs, what if we could actually get proc adornments to drop?
That's also something, you know.
I would love that.
You know, that way you don't have the proc necessarily on an item. You could actually get an adornment with the proc on it. And you could put that into an item, and I mean, you could further personalize it.
Dude, now my mind's going a mile a minute going, oh my, there's going to be so much crafter hunting in my future.
Exactly, that's what it comes down to. That, you know, these are things that you could add to the game. You know, it's like with your stats. They could have, instead of you getting an item, you know, that's got stats on it and everything. It's already predetermined. You get little drops. You might get something that reflects strength, or reflects constitution, or reflects Aggie. Then you get something that reflects a certain proc or a certain resist, and you take that to the crafter, and the crafter goes and, you know, redefines it and bangs it onto your item or onto your gear, etc. So instead of getting gear all the time, you know, why not get stuff like your stats, your resists, your procs, etc. that you can find. I mean, crafters would be out there all the time, you know, coming with you. Hey, I'm a craft, can I come with you guys? I'm looking for something really cool in this dungeon. I heard about it. It's meant to be in here.
I was just thinking of even just some of that stuff. I mean, I could definitely see myself going, any crafters need to run Amber Fate, you know? Let's get a group together. Let's take you to that forge that they were talking about so that you can make me this item, because I'm going to tell you once we get to the forge. So, mind making me this. Since, you know, we got you here. Like, yeah, you have the match. Oh, look, I just so happen to have them right here.
And it's the same with the modifications. In a lot of games, you could reforge your gear. You could, you know, take certain stats down and everything. You go to an NPC. That's something that I don't want to see happen either. I would rather have something like that go to crafters. Have our crafters be the only people that can reforge your gear. That's something, you know, that I think where we should, you know, have a love to our crafters and say, hey, only crafters can do that. You have to go to the armor smith if you've got plate armor. You have to go to the tailor
Makes
if you've
total
got
sense.
leather, etc., etc., etc. Go to the
Now,
weaponsmith for your
Yes.
shield.
I very rarely
I would do
been a
that.
crafter. I have very, very rarely. Like as a tank, I was a crafter only in World of Warcraft because you needed it for certain things because I was a tank. Hearing like from the newsletter, the things that we've talked about, things that we see little hints at, I am very strongly considering crafting. Like not, oh, I'll do it later. Like from the start of the game, I will go and find my trainer and I will start my crafting career because it sounds. Not only does it sound like it could be an awful lot of fun in Pantheon, simply because of the fact that it's not just you're off in the corner, you know, fiddling with your stuff. You know, you're actually out in the world still socializing with people, trying to make things that help people. Whereas adventuring, you're kind of just doing the same thing in a more active role. But it sounds like you actually you would play a pivotal part in the entire server.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that crafters deserve. They've deserved it for like 10 years now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, crafters have not gotten love in hardly any games. It would be so nice to actually see them have the love that they deserve.
Definitely. You know, it's...
And of course, I'm not just saying that because I've got 15 billion crafters, but...
Now Glenn brings something up in chat as well. Instrument itemization for bards. Now, picture that. The bard gets his guitar. Now, if it's predetermined, great, he's got his guitar. But now what if that, instead of having it predetermined, the bard can now turn this into a fire guitar. Boom. And he starts rocking those fire chords. Yeah, and gives you a fire resist or something like that, or all the classes that benefit from fire and use fire as damage get an additional fire buff because he's determined his guitar to be a fire buff. He's going to go out and collect all kinds of guitars, you know.
Now I just see a loop that's got particle effects coming out of it. I just see the guy just drumming like.
I've got this mental image of him playing this fire guitar, and all of a sudden fireballs start shooting out of it.
Oh god, I can see the macros now. Time to shred it on my axe. Fireball. But well, it's like, and with this whole customization, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying that this particular item, because say it's a named, it's Yarnella's staff of butt whooping. Well, if that says it has 25 strength on it plus the customization slots, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Mm-hmm. It's just that when we see those hardwired stats, more often than not, the stats don't make any sense. Yeah. Like, you'll get, I don't know, like a short sword of air, but then it's got like all this strength on it and this and that and fire resist, and you're like, why? It's of air, I can understand having like maybe a lightning resist or maybe some agility because it's a light sword. Who knows? But that's the only thing that I'm asking. There's like hardwired stats that just gotta make more sense.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, just think about what you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Yeah, just don't put the stupid stats that are useless on there just to put stats on. Have them mean something.
So we also talked about when you're going out and questing as well. And this is another important one as well that we talked about. Going out and questing and getting your rewards from the NPCs. Now, more times than you can count on your hands, it's happened to you. You've either got an item that you can put in your house, or you've gotten gear that is completely useless to you. Now, with this,
like not even for your class.
Not even for your class. Now, with this idea of being able to redefine the item or break it down, etc., it has a value regardless what class you are. Now, you can go and sell it to a vendor and get some coin for it, or you can go and take it to a crafter and have him break it down, and you get the core elements out of it. Now, let's say, for instance, now he's dropped a robe. Now, you don't need this robe. You're a plate wearer. But it's got maybe a proc on there, or maybe a stat on there that is of value to you. Now you can go take that to a crafter and say, hey, I want you to break this down to its raw component, and I'm looking for this component. Now you can add stipulations to this as well. Not something that's just crafter takes it, smashes it, and boom, you're done. You might have to go and gather some certain items for it, for you to go and get this stat or the specific proc that you're looking for. So you can add depth to it as well. So it's not something you would just simply go and do. You might have to go and get a proc that is the exact opposite of that for you to go and break it down. Or you might have to go and get additional stats or whatever, or additional items that have this stat on there that are required. You might need five strength stats to get this one stat down. Or exactly have a percentage of failure for extracting, reclaiming, etc. So, because that's one thing that's always bugged me, is getting these 1,000 buckets to put in my house from this one race doing all their quests, or getting items that absolutely have no value to me, or that are below me, below the stats that I'm already wearing. You know, why put those items in the game in the first place? Just for me to make money? Well, rather than doing that, give us, like we said already, more meaningful items out there, less of them, more meaningful items, and give us more money from the get-go. Give us more reward for what we're doing from the start. That's another idea that we thought about, is making these items still worth your while.
Yeah. And we know that, like, with the salvaging that they mentioned in the newsletter, that obviously you can break down items. That they are going to do that. All we're kind of saying is that maybe there can be more to it than just use this ability and you get components. You know, maybe add a little more fun to it.
Yeah.
That's all we're just kind of suggesting about that there. But yeah, a specialization to where you can maybe strip stats from them.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Maybe you take this really good shield that has, a lot of stamina on it. Well, I want that so that I can put in one of my adornment slots for something else. Because I don't need the shield, I'm a two-hand tank for whatever reason. So you take that to the crafter who specializes in, stripping enchant or stripping attributes from a shield or just items. You have to get them some stuff so that maybe they got to build certain tools that can only be used once. They get that 50 stamina off that shield, and then they give you a little gem or whatever they want to do. It's just there is so much potential there, where it's not just click, break it down, click, break it down, click, break it down. Because even with disenchanting and WoW or some of these other games that did salvaging, you'll get a lot of garbage.
Oh yes.
I mean, even if we view it as it is right now, that once they're modified, they're bound to you, etc. Now, even this system that we're even suggesting is something that they could add in later as well. They could add in gear that is defined by you as a player, where you have the basic armor piece, be it plate armor, leather armor, chain armor, or cloth armor, etc. But we can still define it. Now, these are also additions that they could put in later as an additional way to give us something to do. And I think it would make it even worth more while to go out and spend time in the game. You're not going to go and try and rush through certain areas. You're going to look for stuff and try and find certain items. And there's so much that with this kind of system, they could go so far and do so much with it. That's what we were talking about.
That idea, because I know when we were talking about this ahead of time, I had mentioned that, or at least I had briefly talked about how you could get rid of twinking with this system, because I'm against twinking, even though I used to do it all the time. By just saying you need a tier 1 or adornment for this slot, or the higher up you go, the higher tier that they can have up to. That's an easy way to get rid of the whole twinking thing, but I like the idea of upgrading them, because that way, instead of having to pluck it out, get another one made, put that in, I can just say, okay, do what I got to do, upgrade it in where it is, don't have to do anything fancy to it, and boom, it's a little better.
Yep. They kind of had a similar system in Terra, where you would have to go and gather runes, and then they had basically tier 1 to tier 12 or something like that, which you could update. You had to gather runes, you had to gather some kind of I think it was something stock you had to go and gather as well, and you needed so many stock and so many runes to upgrade for every tier. So you could do something similar to that. Let's quickly go and talk about what Guzami77 just said about the loot table, because we actually had a few ideas on that as well. We're definitely in favour of a semi-random loot table,
Right.
but we would like to add something maybe where it's defined also by the behaviour of the NPC. So depending on what kind of behaviour this NPC is in, it's the same mob, but this time he's got a aggressive behaviour on it. Boom, you got that semi-random loot table. Now he's got the alarmist. He's got a completely different loot table. You know, it's completely randomised. That would be, I think, another cool way to also stop all these sites that gather all this information, because you don't know what loot table he has on there, or even his position. The NPC could have, you know, multiple spawn points depending on what spawn point he's at, what behavior he's at. He's got you know, the random loot table A, on the other one he's got random loot table Z, on the other one he's got random loot table Y, as an example.
Yeah, and I like smart loot, but I don't like it everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I know this is overly complicated for a lot of people, so I'm going to try and keep this as straightforward as I possibly can, because I'm a developer. What I would do is I would basically have, you know, 3 stages of loot tables for every mob, whereas the first one is just general, based on the area, you know, just garbage, maybe a couple magic items, you know. Your second tier would be stuff that's specific to that specific orc or disposition, stuff like that. And it could be several different tables that would actually go on a rotating system, so that you don't know exactly, you know that this orc will drop this magic dagger. You just don't really know when. And then on the third tier of it, you get this very small % chance to get smart loot, which is basically loot that is usable by someone who killed it, you know, versus just this random stuff. There is a lot of tweaking in terms of percentage drop rates and all this other stuff we can get into, but needless to say, the farther down you go in tiers, the more rare it becomes. This way, you do get a lot of generalized stuff. You get your trash loot, you get your crafting drops, all this other kind of stuff. Then you get loot that's very specific for what you're fighting. So this orc is going to drop an orcish war club, or he's going to drop orcish war boots, or orc teeth, or something. But then, every now and then, you're going to get lucky, and you'll be like, oh look, Dire Lord boots. I can use those! Oh my god! You know, kind of thing, where those of you that play WoW, and I'm sure a lot of you have, you know that back in vanilla WoW, epic items dropped from everything in the world. Absolutely everything. Completely random. But it was a very, very minute, almost ridiculous chance. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but a little more, less rare than that. A little more common. But you don't have to put epic items in just random drops like that. You could just do smartly. You know, and you get a nice, well-balanced amount of stuff for everybody. The loot tables do make sense to a point. And every now and then you're guaranteed that at some point you're going to get something from this one camp, if you're there long enough, that's specifically for you, if you know this guy drops it or not.
Yep.
You know?
Because, you know, we've all had it happen to us. You've gone into a dungeon looking for a specific item. I told Lex and Shy about this. In EverQuest 2 and Runny Eye 2, they had these ultimate robes, or not robes. What do you call them, Shy? Cloaks. They had cloaks, and they implemented cloaks for each class. And I went in there. I must have gone in there, you know, hundreds of times to try and get my class-specific robe, cloak. So, what am I saying robe for? And obviously, at some point, I passed that level, the new expansion came out. I got a better cloak, etc., etc. And then one day I was helping some guy, you know, go through there and get his stuff and everything. And what happens? My freaking cloak drops. I'm like, well, you know, that's a kick in the teeth. I could have done with that, you know, maybe 10, 15, 20 levels ago. Now I don't need it. We've all been there. There has, obviously, you know, not everything should be given to you from the get-go. It should take you some time to get it, but there should be more higher chance for you to get something, especially when you're in a group. There's no more anger when you're in a group and an item drops that nobody in the group can use or has a use for. It's like, you know, that's a kick in the teeth. So we've all been there.
Though. It's almost worse though when the same item drops for the character that's, you know, like the leather class.
Yeah.
And it's the same item.
Yes, exactly.
Well, actually, it's funny what Andrew Rigger was saying. I cannot tell you how many times I cursed up a storm over TeamSpeak playing an MMO, and I'm going after a certain breastplate or something, and the freaking leather tank item drops like 9 times out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
And there's no leather person. There's like no other person to wear it.
And the funny thing is, if you look at the loot tables, like on a website like Alakazam or Wowhead or whatever, you see like the leather piece that's a 2% chance to drop, and the piece I'm going at has like a 2% chance to drop. But you get the leather one like 9 times in a row. It's like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely it's hard to
Annoying.
balance. It's hard to balance that out though. You know, at the same time, it's very hard to balance out because you don't want to hand out everything to everybody. You don't want everybody running around with all that gear. There has to be limits to it. There has to be limits.
Yeah.
And
another great point comes up. You know, we do understand that you can still technically get some use out of those items, and there does have to be items because there does have to be a thriving economy with trade. So the fact that I get, you know, a summoner staff doesn't necessarily mean it's completely useless to me.
No, because you'll be giving it to Shy.
I'll be giving it to Shy, or I'll have the trade. I still technically have that value because it's trade value. So it's not completely useless, but it would be very nice every now and then to actually just be surprised with, oh my god, you know, I got something I can actually use, versus this is absolutely useless. I'm just going to sell it.
yeah, but look at it from the terms of what what we're suggesting here with defining items, etc. With the possibility of maybe being able to do something like that, that item will have a higher value than it ever would have had in its current state, the way loot's handled.
Right.
You know, the items that we would find in the world that are, you know, defined by their stats, that are, you know, put out there from the devs, etc., with that can't be defined. This item would have a high value. It would have a higher value than anything else right now because everybody's going to be after this item.
Right.
The summoner that might want it is going to, you know, try and get it. The person that wants to break it down because of its procs or its stats that are on there is going to want to try and salvage it, and etc. The value of these items would exponentially grow to, you know, it'll be phenomenally challenging to get.
I don't want to make it seem like I was ignoring it, but Death by Snoosu does bring up a very good point earlier on in chat, saying that they're very worried about crafters having too much power because people start overcharging. But here's my point of view: that if crafting is that powerful, that just wonderful in the game, there's going to be so many crafters. Everyone's going to want to do it. It's not going to be a have to. It's going to be you want to do it. And at that point, even if someone if someone wants to give you this adornment for 500 platinum, I guarantee you that there will probably be someone else, unless it's like just a ridiculously stupid rare recipe, that someone else is going to be able to do it for less because they want that money, you know. In World of Warcraft, when I was blacksmithing on my tank, I can't tell you how many times that, you know, people wanted the gem sockets on their gloves, which I'm pretty sure the blacksmiths could do, or it was bracers or something. I just don't really remember right now. But I would do it almost for free every time that I saw someone trying it, because I could do it. It didn't cost me anything. You know? So I don't think that's really going to be much of an issue. I do understand that, yes, it very well could be. But I don't think it will, because there'll just be so much competition in terms of crafting.
Exactly, that's where the market would come in. That's where the global market would come in, and there'll be price battles. There'll be this, that, and the other. And there's ways to fight that as well. That's why you have your guilds, you have your guild crafters, etc. You have your people in the guild that go and craft the item for you, because they're not going to rip you off. So, but the thing is, in all respect to the crafters, though, they need more. They definitely need more, and I don't feel afraid giving them this power, to be honest. If it's the exact opposite of what the adventurers are doing. It's basically two games in one. You got the crafting side of the game, where the crafters do all their bits and bobs and all their pieces. You got the adventurers in their game. Why shouldn't the crafters have just as much fun doing what they love to do than what we're doing as adventurers, going out and exploring all these different places? Even VR are looking at that aspect as well, by saying, hey, being an adventurer, it would definitely benefit you for being a crafter as well. And there might be certain zones where you have to take a crafter with you to go and do something. And like perfectly said, global market, reputation, basically skill, specialization level, they all come into play. Exactly, Dark Soul. All these aspects come into play. Not everybody's going to be specialized or have the right skill or be at that point, because we also want crafting to be in depth, take you a long time to do. Not something that you can just go and click on a button, max level in a matter of days or whatever. Because we all know that, when it comes to crafting, it takes you maybe a week to max craft, but it takes you like a month to max level or 2 months to max level. Right. We want the the crafting to be just as in depth as it is with the adventuring side, but giving crafters multiple possibilities, other things to do rather than sitting just in front of that workbench, doing the same old.
It's just like adventures. You don't have to go to a very specific area unless the game's poorly designed and it's just a hub fest. You've got choices that you can make. You can go to dungeons. You can go open zones. You can do whatever you want. So why shouldn't crafting be similar? To have not necessarily exactly those kind of options, but something that reflects that in terms of crafting. And I'll just address. I'm probably going to slaughter your name, and I'm sorry, but Guzami77. You do make a very good point where you don't want to have an awesome item that has very high salvage value, because people will camp it, and it will happen. I think that if we add more player customization capabilities to items, you're going to see much less of that sort of thing, simply because that takes away a lot of the design aspect on the developer side. So they'll be able to spend less time designing items and actually having a broader design pattern for themselves to work on, and getting a better even balance across the world. So you won't see like a big spike in terms of value of items in this area versus this area that are both the same level, like we see in a lot of games like EverQuest, vanilla EverQuest. Lower Gook had a crazy amount of value in terms of items, like ridiculous. If you were in a progression server that was just starting, you beeline for Lower Gook, because that was where the money was. Where that shouldn't have been the case. Every other area that was a viable place for level 40 to 50s and all that should have been just as valuable. So I think it will certainly help even out the design if they take away that from developers.
I just had another crazy thought, and it was brought up in chat as well earlier on, about the weather, etc., environments playing a role when it comes to situational gear. Now, with that being said, what about adding items that are needed because of certain ways of weather? Like raincoats. Just as a stupid example, raincoats that may protect you from the rain and everything. We talked about this on, I can't remember what show it was. We were talking about atmosphere and effects, weather and atmosphere. Exactly, we're talking about that.
Say you go to an Arctic area, you just work out.
Yep.
Keep you warm. Just as another dumb example.
Anyway, let me go bring up the disclaimer. Go on, Shy.
Well, no, I was actually going to tag on to that idea that you just said. Because again, you could have something like the wardrobe slot that you could slide, resist gear into.
Yeah. Exactly.
For some reason, I thought you were going to say like fur lining on your armor. I was like, no.
But that could be rather stylish.
It could
Put
be,
a-
but no.
Put a ferret around your neck.
A little pink bow on your scar. There you go.
I can just imagine now a tiny little gnome dressed like a barbarian with like the fur coats and everything.
Alright, so let me go back to the disclaimer, because it's way overdue, and we're actually way overdue as well. We're not gonna have enough time. This is definitely gonna be a show that we're gonna be talking about again at a later point in time, and a bit more clearer. So disclaimer is, we do not work for VR. We're not paid by VR to do our shows. We're here to spread the word of Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, help spread the word of the game, to help pass time while we all wait anxiously for the testing phases to begin and the game to finally be released, and to help think of ideas, ways to expand on what the genre is missing, and help the devs maybe think of that final connecting point, that connecting dot that they're working hard on. And yeah, that's the disclaimer for today. So, on a quick note, next week there is no live show. The show will automatically be released on the 20th on YouTube for you to watch. And as fate has it, it's also an interview with Basgrim. That has also been interviewed, by the looks of it, by the devs in the April newsletter. So you've got double portions of Basgrim. You got him from official channels from VR and from the VOT. So on the 20th, the show for that is not live. It's pre-recorded. There will be no show. We will be back on the 27th. We're not going to be streaming what we had planned already. We had, let me bring it up, Behaviors and Dispositions. That show is going to be pushed back to sometime in June. We will be talking about the stream. So after the stream's finished, we will go into the post-stream discussion and talk about what we saw there, and enjoy all that good fun.
Oh yeah.
Yep, there's 2 streams that have been announced on the 27th and on the 2nd. 2nd of May is the second stream. We'll be looking to get together as well to maybe cover the post stream for the 2nd as well. We'll have to see who's available, how we can fit that into our timetable as well, and do a special stream on that also. And I'm sorry guys that we don't have enough, or much more to say right now at this point. But that will be it for itemization right now, unless you guys have something else to add.
Consider it a short primer.
Yeah, it's basically, this is going to...
We really have very little to go on.
We have very little to go on, and we bashed all these ideas quickly together. And we're definitely going to go more into the defining items, set gear bonuses, etc. to give you a better understanding on what we're trying to bring across here. Because I definitely had my troubles today getting my words out and explaining to it. Yeah, because I'm actually about to head out. I'm away for the week. I'm out of here. I'm leaving the country. I'm going to a different country.
He's too busy wanting to go on vacation.
I'm going on vacation for a week. Yep. So that's why we don't have a stream, but we have the pre-recording for you guys. We'll see you all next... No, not next Thursday. The Thursday after that, on the 27th. Mm-hmm. We'll see you on the 27th again.
Dream day.
And yeah, with that, have a great evening. We're sorry the show was a bit of, or I'm sorry from my point of view that I couldn't explain myself all that good today. I'm completely preoccupied, pre-distracted. But like Lex said, this is a predetermined show for what's to come. Once we know a bit more on itemization, how they want to approach it, etc. But also to give the devs some general ideas. Yeah, this is just wild speculation, and to help give the devs some visual points to look at on how they could approach this differently, and bring something unique to the genre itself again. So with that, guys, see you all on the 27th. I have to always think about that. 27th. not the 20th, the 27th. So
safe, people.
Be safe. Yep. Thanks for joining us, Shy, even though you didn't really talk much.
I'm fine with that.
But it
I'm
was a
totally fine
pleasure.
with that.
She has to learn the 3 greatest words of the DOT. Shut up, Lex.
No.
It's the only way anyone gets any words in.
Yep, so let's say good night.
Good night.
Night.